Good evening and welcome to the coffee table. So spring is not the only thing in the air. We have the Lahore Literary Festival also happening, except this time it's a bit under the radar. We haven't heard much noise about it, but we've managed to find out who all are coming. And we thought this show should be about books and authors. So I have two authors here, right? Both women, both write, both feisty, right? So it's going to be an interesting show. I'm just going to be here listening. They're the ones who are going to be doing most of the talking. So Mehr, you have read Sabin's books. So you introduce Sabyn Javeri to us.
Tough task.
Okay. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Lahore.
Thank you.
Her books are about women we see, women who are around us, and women we don't really pay much attention to.
Right.
Especially in her new book. I will talk about her book, but I want her to introduce her book to us.
Okay. So Sabyn, first tell us.
Instead of me giving, some kind
so
of comment.
So you first tell us, who is Sabyn Javeri?
Okay, a woman.
A woman.
I won't say human because that's not necessarily the best definition. Right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd say I'm a woman and I'm a mother.
Right.
I'm a teacher because I'm a professor.
Yeah. At Habib University.
At Habib
and you're
University.
the dean.
The assistant dean.
Yeah, assistant dean of the humanities.
Sorry, did you
School of
notice
Arts.
the exclusion of the word wife in the introduction? Is that conscious?
Oh my God, you've just given like my husband some ammunition. Right.
So there is a husband there somewhere in the background.
Of course, yes, very much.
Okay, so how does he deal with Sabyn, who's an author, who's a woman, who's a mother, who's the assistant dean of a whole school within Habib University?
Now that you've said all that, it's such a mouthful that I'm actually wondering, how does he deal with it? I think he doesn't, I think.
He does or he doesn't?
I think he doesn't.
He doesn't, okay.
I think I'm still,
What's his name?
Shahzeb.
Shahzeb?
Yeah.
I think we need to get you on one of these days to also talk about it. All right, so let's come on to your
I've not used another word here. Feminist.
Oh,
How
that's
does
given.
it deal with that?
That's given. I have a tattoo.
Oh, you have a tattoo also? Show us. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does it say?
That's a very long story.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about your books. Let's dive straight into it. So the first one was Nobody Killed Her.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Sounds a bit like Who Killed Jessica?
Nobody killed Jessica.
Yeah, something like that,
Nobody Killed Jessica.
So it's quite funny. I didn't know about that film until I had written the book, and I always knew what the title was going to be. And even my editors didn't notice the similarity.
Right.
Maybe because that film, even though it was a very important film, but commercially it didn't do that well. So it kind of skipped under the radar. However, in my book, everyone knows what happened, but no one can do anything about it. Right. So it's cultural opposite in that sense. So the book is about, an assassination of a female politician.
Right.
So it is loosely inspired by Benazir Bhutto's murder.
Yeah.
However, as I was writing the book, I realized that, we actually have quite a few very powerful women in this region. Yeah, and Benazir Bhutto is not the only leader.
Whose lives you read about, yes.
Yes. And as I started discovering more, there's Indira Gandhi, there's Sonia Gandhi who has her own strengths, there's Sheikh Hasina, there's
Mamata Banerjee.
Yes, Mamata Banerjee, and there are just so many more.
There was the Iron Lady Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah, in Europe. Right, so there's just so many women leaders, and I started looking at what they all had in common, the similarities. And what I came across was the challenges they all faced in this hugely patriarchal world of politics, of parliamentary politics. So while the story was loosely inspired by Benazir Bhutto, it began to take on all these elements of all these other powerful women. And I just realized at the end of the day, it's about being a woman. Yeah. And that's how the story came about. So
that brings me to
a page turner of a political thriller. Nobody Killed Her is the most impressive debut novel I've read in years. That's a huge compliment. So how was the reaction to the book?
So the book got really good reviews in India.
Oh, we have something
Was
in
it?
common.
But it's HarperCollins, isn't it? HarperCollins.
HarperCollins.
We have
Yeah.
something in common.
Yeah, so the book actually sold throughout the world. It's sold in the UK, the USA, India. However, the book only came out in India.
Right.
UK and US did not take the book out of their publishing houses, even though it sold, and I had a contractual obligation. Everything was.
So are you available online? Are you on Amazon?
Yeah, it is available through Amazon.
Kindle?
Kindle, everything. But because they felt that the book could become controversial, they took it out through India. India being culturally close to us.
Why do you think it would be controversial?
Because they think that stories matter in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
They think that literature is important. They think writers have a voice. However, in Pakistani society, we are just storytellers.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't have the same voice as journalists. Yeah.
Nobody was interested in publishing it from here, is what you're saying.
No,
All
it was.
all HarperCollins in the US and the UK did not want to
They
publish
did.
it from-
They did buy
did.
the book. They
Right.
did buy the
They
book.
did buy the book,
they
but they
took it
published it
out
through
from.
India.
They took it out from India. Yeah.
From my own experience, what they say is that there are certain books that are of interest only for that particular region. For like my book, it's only going to be published in the subcontinent. But there are people like what's her name? What's the name? Of course, the book on Kandil Baloch, Sanam Mahir.
Yeah, Sanam.
I'm sorry, I'm very bad with names. It's not. I think it's a brilliant book. She's a brilliant writer. So now the book has been taken by another publisher,
Yeah.
Bloomsbury,
Right.
and so they are republishing the book, and it has a different name. It has a different cover.
Yeah.
So, but in most cases, what they say is that our book, my book, for instance, it would have limited interest. Nobody would really be curious to read a book by a Pakistani about things
Why is
that
that
they.
so?
I think it's a chicken and egg thing. It's like the same in our media. There's a lot of talk these days. Why do they always show crying women as
Yeah.
victims? And
Yeah.
they say, oh, the audience wants it.
No, the
you
audience
know?
doesn't. I can
Exactly.
tell you that.
So in the West, you'll hear this, oh, this kind of a book will not be of interest to the Western audience because Western audience is kind of used to, a stereotype of Muslim women,
Yeah.
mostly
All the
being
more
submissive.
reason why it should be published there.
Exactly, in a book where this Muslim woman is refusing to play victim, where
Yeah.
she is in charge.
Sure.
Right? They don't necessarily feel that it will be of appeal to a Western audience because it's not conforming to those kind of standards. So again, I think it's a chicken and egg situation. I'm not 100% sure that it's because the audience doesn't want it or it's because you are
It's the
feeding
perception. It's the perception
a
that they
particular
don't
kind
want
of a
to-
perception.
The
Because
publisher's a chicken.
There are very. I
That's
read
a good
about
way to
books.
put it.
I'm so sorry. I write and I should know names, but someday I'm going to forget my own name. So my apologies in advance to everybody I'm going to mention
1,000 apologies.
on this show because I will be forgetting
Do you
names.
remember Mind Your Language?
I loved it.
Right, okay.
There was.
Did
there
you know
was,
it was published? It was actually produced by Kenyan, by Sharad Patel.
Amazing. Whoever it was, I loved the show.
Right.
I still remember
Okay,
the
I'm sorry for
characters.
interrupting, yeah.
No issue. It's like now I've forgotten what I was saying.
You were going to talk about some author. You were talking about.
Yes, there was this female in India. I think she's in her 20s. I have to find her name. So she wrote this book, first book, a novel, rejected by everybody she sent it to, and then it was published by literally some unknown publisher, kind of. It wasn't a self-published book, but it was published by somebody no one had even heard of. The book became a sensation. She's won awards. As I said, I am so sorry that I don't remember the name, even though books is one constant in my life. I've been reading books.
Is that
But I-
Malhotra?
but I
Was
see
that
your-
Malhotra?
No, I'll just find it. It
But
was
I
just
see your
amazing.
point. I see your point that you can't always judge the taste of
Absolutely.
audience. Sometimes these books which are self-published or come out by these little indie publishers,
Seriously,
they make it really
that's
big.
exactly what happened.
Right?
You must have read about her too. I'm surprised
Unless you
that
give
I
us a
don't
reference to the
remember.
book.
No, she would, because this was such an unusual story.
What
a
is it
young
about?
woman.
What is it about?
I think it was based on for those who loved. I'll just find the name, please.
Okay.
Don't. I will keep
Yeah, find the
forgetting
name.
names and
You find the name,
I'm
we'll
going to
talk.
I'm going to find the name.
Yeah, you find the name. All right.
Just go to this book. She has very interesting stories in this one.
We're talking about viewpoints, right? We're talking about the patriarchal structures, right? And within that, here are a lot of some very powerful, strong women who break through. And politics is not an easy place to break through it.
Definitely not.
Right? There's a boys' club everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a tough one.
Yeah.
Which means you have to be an exceptional person, right, to really break through all that. So how does so nobody killed her, right? Where does it lead us? What happens? How does the story play out?
Okay, so nobody killed her. So I've tried to contrast two women because on one hand I was looking at women like Indira Gandhi or Benazir Bhutto, the leader of Burma.
Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yes, who are sort of born into this legacy of politics. And then there are women like Mamata Banerjee who who rise through the ashes. And who sort of like make their way up. So I thought it would be very interesting to have a contrast in the same book of two different women, same gender, but different class and different backgrounds. So one is from a...
There's class distinction also, right? So we're looking at two different people, same gender, but a class structure also.
Yeah, definitely. So it's about class, it's about privilege, it's about how do you break through your class barriers, right? And also, what do you do with privilege? What if you've been bestowed with a privilege, but you do not want that legacy? So there's this one character who's trying to break out of that privilege, and the other who's trying to rise to it. So the kind of games they play.
That's an interesting juxtaposition, huh?
Yeah. And
so
also
does it lead to a lot of conflict? Does it lead to friction?
Yes,
what happens?
Yes,
it does. It's absolutely, it's a maze, and like it says, it's a page turner. Because another thing I wanted to break out of was the stereotype that, women can't write thrillers and political thrillers. If you go to a big bookshop, you see this actual category of women's fiction.
Yes.
It has all those romance novels. Yeah.
Twinkle Khanna has a huge issue with this thing. She wants to be, she's at the moment, she's the most selling, best-selling.
She sells more than
everybody else. She's the most selling female author in India.
But they'll still
and she really
attach
resents the word female.
Absolutely.
Because how can you, I think it restricts your leadership. People, for instance, somebody normal, typical, not a normal, typical man, but I'm sorry.
I think that's a compliment.
No, you're not a normal, typical man, but a lot of men would say, "Oh, this is a chick flick. This is a book written by a woman. It's going to be talking about women issues, and it's not going to be of interest to us." Like I read somebody's comment on Twitter about movies that I'm so glad it was about some Indian movie that is not going to be shown in Pakistan. I think Total Dhamal or something, and people mocked it, and because apparently it's a kind of slapstick comedy that most people.
Yeah, but that's a franchise.
I know most of us are not interested in. But so some Pakistani wrote that I'm so glad that now most of the men who watch Indian movies because their wives force them to. That if it was up to them, they would not go and watch an Indian movie or a Pakistani movie, for instance. They only watch Hollywood movies, and that too of a particular genre. They wouldn't just go and watch, a Notting Hill on their own or a Pretty Woman. And even though these are the movies that have been seen by, I think all the males I know at least.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. This is very
patriarchy.
problematic.
One of the most interesting sentences that came from you in one of your interviews was, you were talking about these two stories that are in your new book, Hijabistan. I think one is about a woman who under the parda starts to do things she's not supposed to do. And you said the two stories really drained you because you had to fight the patriarchy within you. I was very fascinated by it because I can so relate to that thing.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one.
Seriously.
So how do you carry patriarchy within you?
Because we grow up internalizing patriarchy and we don't even realize it.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this. We're just going to take a short break. This is a very, very interesting thing to touch upon. So we're going to take a break, come back to us. Do find out what book Mehr was referring to. Welcome back. So, Sabine, just before we went to the break, we were talking about the kind of embedded patriarchal prejudices, right? It's interesting coming from a woman.
It is, yes. It actually took me a long while to realize this. It wasn't
What kind of a household did you grow up in? A lot of brothers?
No, actually. So I am. I have some step siblings,
Okay.
but I am the only child from my mother.
Okay.
And it was a very sheltered upbringing.
Sheltered.
My father
That's an
was.
interesting word, huh?
Yeah,
Sheltered.
yeah,
What
very
does it
protected.
really mean?
Sheltered means, very protected, not going out a lot on my own, just
So
come
sheltered
home.
or restricted?
Not restricted, I
Not
think just
restricted.
protected, just sheltered, just shepherded everywhere and not really exposed to the realities of life. But
So in the hijab without being in the hijab.
absolutely, and that's what my book talks
Yeah.
about.
I
The hijab
have
doesn't
found
have to be a
it.
garment.
Exact
Hijabistan,
words.
huh?
Yeah.
The exact
What are the
words.
exact words?
The date has a protagonist who uses sex as currency but does so consciously refusing to be slaughtered as a victim. Both these stories were draining and took a lot out of me, for they made me question and confront every core belief I'd grown up with. In a way, they challenged me, made me realize the internalized patriarchy inside me.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I was scared of what people would think of me if I published these stories.
Right.
In the end, I decided to go ahead because I believe you have to start with yourself.
Does a writer write from personal experience?
I don't think
The
you have
first
to
book.
personally experience everything to feel it. Because when I was researching my stories, and this particular story of a sex worker who finds sex very empowering.
Right.
She was not ashamed of her profession.
Yeah.
She
Okay.
thought that she was taking control. And that's what I meant by challenging my own prejudice. When I say I had a very sheltered upbringing, I wasn't exposed to a lot of different kind of people. My mother was a very traditional person,
Right.
very spiritual, and the binaries of good girl and bad girl
Right.
were very clearly
Of
defined.
course. We all grew up like
Pink
Exactly.
ribbons,
Yeah, or
No,
like a
not
good
just
girl
a-
will do
huh.
this, or a bad girl will do this. So,
Right.
the
Absolutely.
vamp and the heroine were like very, very, poles
Clear.
apart, kind of. Yeah, very polarized kind of morality, which our dramas also do nowadays, right? So in that sense, for me, to write positively about a character which is adopting a negative trait or negative considered by the society,
Yeah.
right? I mean, again, if you really think about it, men can sleep around. Everybody would say, oh, what is that? But if a woman does it, not good.
Yeah.
If a man is very experienced, if you take the concept of experience in,
Right.
in marriage, with men it's fine, with women it's,
And it's just,
Yeah.
what she has said is so important. And as a woman, I've never even thought of it this way.
Yeah.
Okay, I was somebody, or I am somebody, I don't judge people, but I know how people are judged, how I have been judged for a number of things and the number of choices that I made. And this is because it comes from women. Then it becomes worse.
Yeah. And
when
women often endorse
start to
patriarchy.
put you in
Okay,
boxes. and
let me ask you this question. So who holds you responsible, men or women?
So you see, it's not an
Women.
easy question to answer.
That's why I asked this.
Because that's what women think, but it's
Right.
actually not true.
Right.
It's actually, the structures are made for us in such a way because our morality is so clearly defined by the men around us.
Right.
Because we
That
are
is
so
true.
powerless.
It comes from men.
That the only way we feel empowered is by endorsing that patriarchy.
Right.
And when I
A
was
woman
writing,
can be the enforcer of that morality,
exactly,
the mother. Huh.
and I always say that public space, okay, fine, it's a very patriarchal society in Pakistan, but private spaces are very matriarchal.
Yes.
We have this one big head of the family, the grandma or the mother-in-law. If she wants, she can bring about that positive change, but often either because she has gone through all that pain or because she feels that it would make her more important, she will then end up endorsing that patriarchy onto.
But
then we
the
think
reference-
all
the
right,
reference is
okay,
always
So hang
made.
on.
Huh.
Does economics play a role here?
They do, but again, it's the grandmother or the mother who will say, okay, fine,
So I'm
the
talking
daughter.
in context of property,
No,
inheritance.
that's what I'm saying. See, a daughter, they'll say, okay, my daughter should study. Okay, nowadays, most parents will say, okay, both, brother and sister are studying. Afterwards, both get a job. The brother will go to work, stay out till 11 or 12 in the night. The woman, the sister, will have to come back at 5 o'clock. How is her career going to grow, right? How is she finally going to become financially independent? Then they will say, get married, what will society say? So this is what I mean by endorsing patriarchy.
Right.
The woman, if she wants, can say, okay, no, this happened
So
to
there
me,
are
so I will not
defined
do it to her.
trajectories,
Exactly.
irrespective
Yeah.
of even when you're growing up in a slightly more liberal environment.
And
there is
that's
still
where
a
we have to-
trajectory that is expected. right?
Absolutely.
At some point in time,
Yeah.
you will have to conform to that.
Yeah, but I think that's where the matriarchal figure has to take a stand. And she has to say that, no, I will not care now, what the rest of the world is going to say. I am going to give the same equal freedom, right? Or the way men can help is that, if...
But it's easier said than done, because most women would want to say that, and they want their daughters to have the opportunities their sons have, but most of them end up
Well, I'm not saying that they
behaving
should only
differently.
saying it to their daughter, to their son also. They should say that, okay, it's not, it shouldn't be that you come home from work and you just sit there, watch TV while your wife comes home from work and she puts on the apron and cooks and puts the, kids to bed. Men, also sons, we have to teach our sons how to be feminist.
It takes me to Father of the Bride.
Okay.
Right? So the first kind of fight they have
Yeah.
is of the gift that he gives her,
Yeah.
which is a blender.
Oh, gosh.
Something like that,
You see what
the
you
guy
have
she's
to
engaged
do.
to, he gives her a gift, which is a blender. And
Yeah.
she blows
That's
a
supposed
fit
to
and says,
be
what
a-
is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
I don't
As if
remember
he
that,
really
but I've
gets
seen the
pleasure
movie.
in housework.
You see, what you have said is what I have practiced. This is what I've taught my son. I come from a background where women are supposed to behave in a certain way. They are supposed to behave in a certain manner. They are supposed to think in a certain manner.
Yeah.
And everything that, for instance, if my grandmother said something or if my mother said something, it would always come from, it was the point of view of the man. It was always, wo kya ke baap kya kahega ya bhai kya kahega, or I'm going to, okay, I come from a broken family, but of course I've seen this all around me. What will your brother say? What will your father say?
Yeah, yeah.
लोग क्या कहेंगे सबसे important बात. So all I could do was teach my son how to not be one of those men.
Yeah. And that's where change
Let me
comes in.
argue.
But again,
Let
the
me
fact
argue
that he grew up in the
at the
environment
risk,
that he did.
At the risk of mansplaining.
No, it's not it's not
At
mansplaining.
the risk
And
of
gaslighting.
gaslighting.
It's not, all of us have to be together to change the world. That's what
Can
I
I get
believe.
into
men
word
and women.
sideways?
I'm taking your
Right,
side.
so-
See,
So
that's the
men
thing.
also at times have to conform, right, to a set of morality, right, which unfortunately is not necessarily what they really want to do.
For
It
instance.
What
is just
is it that
expected.
men
Boys
do?
are supposed to be boys, right? Say
Well,
who?
No, what are you even
sorry,
saying?
but that's a very sexist thing to say.
Yeah, I
Boys
know.
will be
That's
boys.
exactly what I'm referring to. Why does it have to be like that? It shouldn't be like that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
So what brings that on, right? Now, we live in a world where there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of interaction. It may not happen in my school, it may not be, maybe in college, maybe in university. So there is that there is a lot of kind of friction also, right? And humor becomes an icebreaker, and you use those things. So Hijabistan, in the context of the veil, in the context of what I wear, how I look, so it's about identity also, right?
So it's a collection of short stories,
Yeah.
themed short stories. In some way or the other, they all revolve around the hijab, but not the hijab as a
I
physical
think,
garment.
again,
Okay.
metaphor.
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphorical interpretation of what the hijab means.
Right.
So basically, the idea of what we are veiling,
Right.
what we are hiding or
Okay.
suppressing, or what we are not showing.
Right.
So, my previous book was a
So the
story
word
I
is
wanted to
veiling
tell.
rather than the veil.
Yeah. So, the previous story was a story I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
In this one, it's the stories which people don't tell.
Okay.
The stories that we hide, which we don't want anyone to know. So
Right.
that's what this one focuses on. So it
So
has
it's suppression.
Yeah, suppression, oppression, and of desire,
Right.
of will.
Yeah.
So there are different stories in it. There's this one story in which the protagonist is, feels really challenged because she wants to be someone, but she again has that internalized patriarchy where she knows that if she is ambitious or if she is called career-minded,
Right.
it's going to be very negative. While if a husband is called career-minded
He's
and ambitious,
ambitious,
that's wonderful.
It's a global
I mean,
thing.
that's what
Again,
you
this
want
is
in
a
a
global
husband,
phenomenon.
right? Yes.
No, but this reminds me of lipstick under burqa, actually. It is quite, the idea is the same, that they are, in the sense that they are hiding who they are. That is the idea behind this book, what you just said.
You know, unfortunately, I still haven't seen that film.
No, again,
Yeah.
that means that all of you who are using hijab or burqa as a reference are talking about the same thing.
I mean,
It's
well,
veiling, the
not
words you
all-
just used.
Yeah,
That
not
it's a-
all the women in this book wear the hijab.
that's the
only
thing
some
that-
do.
yes.
But yeah, the central idea is, you know, the things that we want to hide and the divide. You know, because the veil divides you, separates you from the rest of
absolutely.
the world. So it also looks at, you know, what divides men and women. It also looks at this whole idea I was
So does
saying
choice
about.
figure anywhere there?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about my book, which the person who launched my book at KLF, Nimra Bucha, said
Right.
was that while reading the book, she felt that all the women were free. I didn't want to show women as victims because
Good.
I don't think Pakistani women or necessarily Muslim women are victims. I think they're survivors.
Right.
And I wanted to show that side, you know. So all the women in this do have a choice, even if it's a very bad choice, because there's this one story which is very disturbing,
Right.
where the woman makes a horrible choice, but at least she has the power to choose.
Sure, that's a very important one, isn't
Because
it?
when you use the word hijab in today's world, where there's so much, I don't even like to use the word, but Islamophobia, and there are all these stereotypes that Muslim women, all Muslim women
The
are
burkini
suppressed.
to start with.
They are,
right? Yeah.
That makes no sense. You know, that whole entire word. No, but it's quite interesting to see men in, for instance, Gulf countries, and they are doing whatever they are doing, and then there are women who are completely covered. So they take them everywhere, but they are supposed to look a certain way. Like that day when we were having coffee, and that couple walked in, it was like close to midnight, and the nice-looking man, must be in his 30s, very nicely dressed, wearing a very cool leather jacket like you. No, now she and
Leather
the Prime
jackets
Minister.
are in, by the way.
She and the Prime Minister. Now
Yeah.
I think
No,
it's
leather
okay.
jackets
Yes,
are in.
leather
Oh,
jackets are
okay,
in.
yeah, I'm imitating the Prime Minister.
No, you're not imitating him. You're a female. You have your own thing. But now we have two people.
Okay, I
So
again, I missed
and
out
then
on that
there was his wife was with him, and she was completely covered. There was a little girl, and I was just thinking that in a while, in a few years, he would expect probably the little girl to behave in a certain manner too,
Yeah.
to be dressed.
Maybe,
That's
yeah.
kind of.
So you see,
But
I don't have
otherwise,
a problem
who knows?
with the
Who
hijab.
knows now?
Yeah.
I just think it should be
Huh.
your own choice.
But that's the
Yeah.
thing. I am making this judgment from a distance. Maybe she did it on her own. I know very modern women who suddenly one day decided that they
No, but
want to
there's a
cover their
different-
heads.
there- hang on. There are different views on this. There is also different reasons. Like I'm at a university, right, where there are almost 40%, maybe a little more than that, girls who are on that campus, and there's a diversity, right, in the way that they appear. You know, the
Yeah.
kind of identity they hold. So there are girls who are completely covered. There are girls who just cover their head.
Yeah.
And there are girls who don't cover their head.
But see, that's the thing. So this is a fact that the hijab, at least in the Western world,
Yeah.
has become synonymous with Muslim identity.
Yeah.
But actually, in countries like Pakistan, the hijab is not a symbol of piety. Half the people
a
you
cultural
meet
thing.
will not be wearing the hijab because they're overly pious or religious reasons.
Especially people, women from villages.
They wear it. No, they wear it for to feel safe in public spaces, for to get to point A to B. For public transport,
Right,
for,
yeah.
for
So it's
mobility.
safety. It's
Well,
confidence,
it's not.
isn't it?
No, I mean, I don't think the hijab actually protects you because a
Right.
lot of students in my university
Yeah.
say that they feel less harassed on public
Right.
transport if they're
So
wearing a
it's a
hijab.
matter, it's a figure of confidence in a way.
I mean, people have all sorts of reasons
Yeah.
for covering
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
I
right?
think
Yeah.
it's a very sad state of affairs.
No, we can't
That
make
women,
that judgment call and say it's very sad state
no,
of
no,
affairs.
no.
As long as
I'm
choice.
talking about this particular thing that she's talking
Hmm.
about. That women have to wear a certain thing to feel safe. That's what I'm talking about. The women who have chosen to do that. Otherwise, I'm perfectly fine with that. As I said, my sister has always dressed up in a completely different manner than mine. And now at my age, I will wear certain things because I want to. I want to dress up in that manner.
What you're saying, what is upsetting is that it is okay in our part of the world for a woman to cover herself, but not okay for a woman to bare herself.
Right.
So then that takes the choice away. I think if you really talk about choice, then both things should be
Right.
okay. A
But
woman
then
should
that's
have both
that's where religion
choices.
comes in, because at the end of the day, this is not just a 50%
We're
or
going
a
to come back to
40%
this.
Muslim country.
We need to take
Okay.
another break. So this is getting to an interesting point, right? So we're talking about the hijab as a metaphor. We're talking about hijab by choice. We're talking hijab as a symbol of suppression, oppression. So let's come back to this and we'll pick it up more. We want to also hear what you have to say. So please do comment. Welcome back from the break. So we were talking about, Sabine, you talk about the hijab as a metaphor, you talk about it as a physical garment also in places. You're talking about the separation that the veil creates, right? You're also talking about veiling, which means
Yes.
whatever happens behind the hijab also.
Yes.
So there are multiple dimensions. It's not one single dimension,
Yeah.
right? Mehr, you were talking about yourself and your sister having two different viewpoints. Growing up in the same home, having experienced the same things, how does it reconcile?
So it's all about diversity.
It's all about diversity.
See, what is really problematic and disturbing is how we are boxed together. How this, single stereotype is created of a Muslim woman or a woman who wears the hijab.
Right.
And this is what I want to break out because
Okay.
there's just so much more. We're just so
But no,
diverse.
in our case, the thing that happened is, and to date, it's very important for her to conform to societal expectations of how a woman should be. She's very much concerned about how things appear to be. And I wasn't. I didn't really care what people thought, because I thought it's more about my conscience, or I believe in God. I'm a practicing Muslim, so my morality stems first from my humanity, and then because, as I said, as I've grown older, it is all about how I look at things now. Now nobody's telling me to wear what I don't want to wear, but I have been through that. We were asked to cover our head at a very young age. We were brought up by a very strict, a very religious grandmother, and obviously at that point in time we resented whatever she was teaching us. But now I'm glad that she taught us what she taught us. And
But you're right. I think that's another thing particular to our part of the world, that we don't respect our women and sometimes even ourselves until we desexualize them, until you're at a part where you cannot be a threat, either to others or to yourself.
That's such an important point.
And sometimes that confidence comes when you're older and wiser, when you're able to take that criticism and like I said in
so
that
right.
line, that I was really worried what would people think about me, कि ये कैसी कहानियाँ लिख रही है, and I did get that.
Right.
I got it from some of my colleagues, I got it from some of my friends, from some relatives. They were like, what are you writing? So it takes a certain amount of maturity. And
It takes a lot of courage.
yeah, it does, and that doesn't
But I
come
heard,
easy.
I asked her and said, so what's Sabine like as a person? I said, she's very, very smart. Okay, I said, that's good. What next? What else? So she said, she's very, very strong. So if you give her an inch of space, she'll drive a truck right through it.
Oh my God. Who said
who
this?
said,
Yeah,
who
I'm
said
not going
that?
to tell you who said
No, a male or a
that.
female?
No, of course, female.
Yeah, sounds like a female. If it was a male one, they would say, Oh, she's very sweet. She's
It was Fifi.
oh, okay.
So she said, you better be careful. I said,
Okay.
okay, I'll be very careful.
But she's
So tell us, when you write a book like that, and you have a lot of questions yourself also, and saying, how's this going to be perceived? Can I really tell this story? Will this story resonate? It has to resonate with the people who are going to read it, right?
Yeah.
So, what goes on through an author's mind?
Okay.
I'm very curious to know because I'm too lazy to write myself.
and I don't have any imagination, so both of us will not be writing a novel
Ghostwriters.
anytime soon. So
I have a
Right.
lot of
No, no, we will-
imagination,
so
I'm
he
just
has
lazy.
imagination.
okay,
and,
then
Yeah, I'm
give me
lazy.
your imagination. I'll write the book.
I'm
That'd
extremely
be like the-
imaginative.
Give me your
right.
ideas. I'll write the
Okay.
book.
Sorry, I just thought of the blind and the deaf going through a fire.
Absolutely, that's the way it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think writers are incredibly selfish people.
Okay.
I think
That's
they
a nice
write.
one.
Yeah.
They
I
are.
think, yeah, I think they write
have to be.
firstly and first most for themselves.
Right.
You know, the story has to appeal to them.
Just like Jafar Panahi, right, the Iranian filmmaker.
Yeah,
He said,
yeah.
I make movies for myself.
myself, yeah,
And, if you like it, great. If you
Don't
don't,
like it,
it's
too
a
bad.
movie I wanted to make. So
Not
it's a
getting
story
your
I
money
wanted
back.
to
That's
write.
the only way to make a movie.
Right? So
or
it's the
write a
story
book.
that you wanted to write.
Yeah,
has
and I
to
think
come
that
from-
passion comes through.
And
Yeah.
it has to matter
You know?
to you what you're writing.
Yeah, because
You can't
only
write
then.
just because everybody else is writing about
No,
it.
no. I think you have to feel the story because only
Absolutely.
then you can really tell the story. So yeah, when these stories just really appealed to me, and I thought these stories need to be told because I wasn't finding these kind of stories anywhere else in the kind of literature that was coming out of South Asia.
Right.
I felt the stories being told were not reflecting the environment around me. I felt a lot of them were perceptions of how perhaps women were supposed to be. So that was one reason I wanted to tell stories which I had heard or which I had felt. And the other was, in that one, I wanted to make a point. I wanted to write a political thriller because I felt I had the right to. Why not? Why shouldn't I write one?
Sure.
And also at that time, there was this literary trend to write very flowery sort of prose, with like 12 adjectives
Right.
and then gulab jamun kind of writing. And
I like that. Gulab jamun kind of
like
writing.
really rich,
Sweet
writing,
and
very
thickly.
rich. Yeah. So I wanted to write something that was simple, easy, accessible.
Right.
And I remember when I wrote this, and I used to go to a writing group in London, and they said, "But have you read God of Small Things, or have you read Tiger Hills?" And they just don't expect that kind of prose to come from a South Asian writer. But I thought, why not? If John Grisham can do it, if other people
Yeah,
can do
sure.
it, why
But
can't
that's
we?
what I read a bit from that book, from this book. And what I noticed immediately was the way you wrote. It's just,
It's very simple.
you'll have to
writing.
see it.
No.
It's like
I've read excerpts, so I know
it's like,
it's a very easy flowing style.
no,
Yeah,
it's
it's
like
very,
no,
very
it's like how
simple.
someone is thinking. This is, it's
It's very
it's a
staccato,
New
small
Yorkish. Yes, it's a
sentences, yeah.
New Yorkish.
Did you have your session with the LLF today or is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow at 4:45.
At 4:45.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I'm going to
it's
be
the launch
there
of Hijabistan.
to hear a bit more.
that'll be excellent.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So, I'm trying to think of it, right, and saying here is a book, and there are subtexts. Even in Nobody Killed Her, there are subtexts.
In Hijabistan?
Yeah, or in Nobody Killed Her.
Okay, so in both the books, what I've tried to explore is female friendships.
Okay.
Okay. And if you wanted to oversimplify something, it's very easy to say that women can only be friends if they're either lovers or they can be enemies,
Right.
because women just hate each other. I think that's not true.
At all.
Yeah, I think women can be friends. They don't have to be
course.
lovers just because they
Yeah,
like each other, right? I mean, when we have male friendships, we are happy to see them as complex friendships, right? But for women, we often try to oversimplify it that, if they are close together, if they're confiding,
women normally
or if
have
they're-
Oh God, this is what I just heard on Coffee with Karan of all the places where the only thing I think ever since he became very controversial because of that interview with the two cricketers, because mostly he talks about relationships and the imaginary relationships or the could be or should be's, and So in this one, there are these two young actresses who are going to be in his new movie, Student of the Year 2. So one of them is Chunky Pandey's daughter, and the other one is this very beautiful female, Tarar something. She's an outsider, and there's Jackie Shroff's son. And so he was talking about the two of them. I don't know which one mentioned it, but they cuddle, and all the pictures are with one another, and they love one another, even though they are co-stars in their first movie, but they are so close to one another, and they are all over one another. That they had to joke about it.
I mean,
it becomes a joke because people start to attach physical connotations to every kind of physical closeness.
Yeah, so I wanted to challenge that, because I mean, men are,
they can walk down the road holding hands.
Yeah, I mean, in our part of the world, right? I mean, abroad, you would.
No, I haven't.
Ever?
No, no, I haven't.
Over here, if a girl and a boy would hold hands, that would be controversial. But a boy and a boy is.
That's true, actually.
I want to hold somebody's hand and just walk, even though I'm not a hand holder, but sometimes I want to. And even at my age, and even being somebody who doesn't really care about society, I don't want the attention. I don't want people to look at me when I'm holding somebody's hand.
So how's the reception been to Hijabistan in Pakistan?
So it had a launch at the Other Festival.
Okay.
Couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it did really well in terms of sales. In terms of feedback,
people who read it.
The older people who read it were again very scandalized.
They were scandalized.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're like, why do you have to write about such embarrassing things?
Really?
And
People
I was like, somebody
you knew
does.
or random strangers?
No, people I knew.
Okay.
Very, very dear people.
They always have
Sabine, you're a nice girl. What are you writing?
They always
exactly.
People we are very close to always have something to say.
Yeah, and always like, but like, how do you know this? And I'll be like, I'm not like a baby, right? So I think it still makes people uncomfortable.
It does, huh?
If coming from someone that they know. I think it would be okay if this was some, white writer or anthropologist or sociologist, observing or writing from a distance. But I think when it's a voice from one of your own, from within you, then it's disturbing, because then it's acknowledgement that it's happening.
I want to ask you something. When you go to a bookshop...
Do I have the right to remain silent?
In Pakistan, no. You do not have the option of silence now.
All right.
Do you buy books written by women? If it's not a Michelle Obama or
No, I'll buy a book because it's a good book.
How do
I
you?
don't care
If you have heard about the book,
what I normally do is either I've heard about it and I want to have a look at it. I'll read the back. I'll read the blurb. I might read just one random page and I'll decide.
That's if the book is there, right? I think one of the problems that we have is that
the book is not there.
Yeah, it's not on the main shelf. It's slotted in women's fiction, shelf, and women's fiction is usually a very romance or Mills and Boone category. Well, again, see, there are, there are people in there.
I watched both the books together, Hanif and...
One last question that I must ask, because we're just coming to the end of it. So you're teaching also.
Yes.
You're teaching literature and you're teaching creative writing,
yes.
right? So how do your students react
to
your book?
I teach in a liberal arts college.
Yeah, I know. But in not a very liberal society, Karachi.
So I think I'm in a unique position in the sense that because I teach in a liberal arts college, and one of the first things that we do when our students come to us is make them unlearn everything that they have, that prior preconceived knowledge, the state narratives. So because we're already challenging their prejudice, it's not such a shock for them. But again, I don't force them to read my books.
Okay.
So,
but have they read your book?
A lot of them have read Nobody Killed Her, and quite a few of them are looking forward to Hijabistan.
Okay.
And I think
that's wonderful.
They
most teachers would be very conscious.
But unfortunately, we're going to come to the end of the program. There's never ever enough time. This is such an interesting subject. And you're such a wonderful guest.
We'll invite
I
her
would
again.
like to just put in one more
Yeah,
thing,
sure.
that I've actually curated an anthology of my
Okay.
students' work, which
Right.
has even more gutsy stories.
Okay, brilliant.
I would
brilliant.
love
we,
to read
we need to talk about that sometime, and make a reference to it. So books and authors, we've managed to get 2 authors on the same table. I feel very, very inadequate because much as I would love to write, I just don't have the... I don't
Patience.
have... Well, not just that. I don't have the discipline to...
Well, someone might write your story.
Yeah, somebody might write, or I might be a chapter in somebody's book.
There
That
we go again.
Or maybe
So
the
thank
main
you for being
protagonist.
with us.
As long
We're
as
going
it's
to be
not a
back
footnote, as I
tomorrow with
say.
another program. Thank you very much for staying with us today.